Welcome to the Internet of Value Foundation, New York, episode 126. Glad to be here today, of course, on this Thursday of the month, March 19th, 2026. And I thank you, Andy, both and Vet, for joining the space so quickly, guys. This is going to be a great one today. I probably will keep it pretty short. I've had this topic in my head for the last couple days. These actuators, AI, and robotics, the combination of the three, if you will. And in reference to a couple conversations I've been seeing become more popular and on X and just in general in society. From this, like looking at automation and robotics and how it is today, and this thought of actuators, these mechanical devices that, when pressurized in the right formations and ways through electromagnetic signals or hydraulics, whatever it may be, the actuator performs mechanical movements similar to things that are possibly occurring in the human body today. And I'm gonna go grab a couple posts. I'm gonna go post them up top. But yep, welcome everyone to the space, and thank you for joining.
Hey,
Devon, welcome up.
can you hear me?
As much as the space is still giving me the option to add you as a speaker, I do hear you. Yes.
What's going on, Death Ranger? How you doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing well. How about yourself?
All right. I'm just running around. I'm going to a Bulls game tonight, so I'm just running around getting everything that I can get before we go.
This is such a great, also something to bring up. Think about it from a sports game perspective. How I'm going to start right there because you know what? I think that's a very big deal. Sports in general is a very large entertainment or infotainment mechanism that's used today throughout society all over the globe, right? Geographically, everywhere. There's a sport in every country and some sort of idolized, if you will, teams that represent those sports for those countries. Today, we have things like the Olympics and the Olympics, of course, adopting things such as esports, right, or these digital formations of the same kind of articulations, this competitive environment of teams battling teams for the victor of the whatever sport it may be, digitally or physically. I think personally, and very close to it. I mean, we're already seeing robotic games. I mean, we've had drones, robotic drones battling each other for the last 15, 20 years. Has actually been a pretty popular thing, which I think is only going to be increasing in popularity as well. But the thought of sports, I mean, football, basketball, all of these things that we think today that robotics may not be able to accomplish, I think we are on the precipice of it being able to be accomplished. I mean, 5 to 10 years away, where I think from a cost perspective, from the ability to have performance, the way that people may be not even able to think about it today, things that could be done through these possibilities of mechanical operations that could take more impact force and output more force than, of course, our bones and our biological systems are able to do at this moment. I think sports is going to be a hugely popularized thing through robotics, and robots will probably be the majority of that infotainment kind of theme of sports will be represented by robotics and automation. Yeah, I posted something up top actually just recently from Ripple X today about T54 and what they're doing with their large language models being able to act as an agent on the XRP ledger and transact between different agents, right, utilizing the XRP ledger as this foundational piece of proof, because of how quick, transparent, and cost effective it is to be able to transfer information through the XRP ledger in the form of these transactions that occur. And I think even even thinking about how that could play in line with just how you brought up Devon, these sports, um, the means of micropayments and betting, the ability to have these extremely articulated interpretations of very minute time frames, and be able to, if you will, something like we have today already that's already becoming very popular, these prediction markets, even pre moment of occurrence, trying to interpret what will actually occur. I think things like large language models, these robotics, and then of course robotics with actuators and then performing the sports, all of them are going to essentially be on the same underlying systems, the same interoperable means of being able to transfer data between each other, whether it's these robots that have to transfer these forms of data on the field to another system that then gets to interpret that and then gives the ability for these predictions to be made. All of these things will have information that will be transferred between these agents, and I think blockchain, of course, is as put up top, the XRP ledger plays is like positioned perfectly to kind of play a role in that. Of course, I'm just going off my own uh, uh, mind here of what I think is going to actually be occurring pretty soon. But back to robotics, actuators, and the combination of large language models. Take it even one step farther in thinking these robotics that could be on the field playing these sports would be pre-programmed to have these determinations of the moves that would be able to be done, similar to how we've seen these large language models.
Can I ask you a question right now, right there about that?
Yeah, please.
Uh, um, what makes sports exciting? Is it the fact that our biology doesn't allow us to do some of the amazing feats that these athletes can do at a high performance level, or is it just the fact that we're seeing amazing things done? Because if we introduce robotics, like everybody could jump from the free throw line and dunk like LeBron James, but isn't that what makes the feat that LeBron does so exciting? Is the fact that the normal individual can't do it?
And so, actually, interestingly enough, I don't think so. Actually, I think the largest reason why individuals get because playing sports and watching sports are probably interpreted in the brain as very two different things that are being done. I think the watching of sports, the betting on sports, the idolizing of the teams and the players, this is purely competitive. My team is better than your team, right? We've won this year's tournament, etc., etc. LeBron James is the best, right? Why is he the best? Because you believe he's better than other people. There's a competition there, I think, and sports or the illustrators of sports are really great at producing those hijacking moments where they can take you out of the theme of what is actually your society and your life and put you into this moment of believing that you're actually part of this team, that you are the team. And I think it's very powerful, and I think that's also why sports in general, depending, doesn't matter what sport it is able to be so popularized and taken upon our species so in depthly.
It's not that I disagree with you. It's just that I don't necessarily see that in any other sector, right? Everything where there's always an average, right? But we celebrate people who have above average, or we pay attention more to anybody that is out that deviates from the current standard of what society accepts as average or normal, right? Even in intelligence, we give people awards and we celebrate people for having higher IQs than the average. So these people who are, professional athletes, they are above average, right? They can do things that the average individual can do, and that's what entices us to want to give them more admiration. I do believe that there are other external factors that you just talked about, right? That goes without saying. But we would always notice people who deviate from the standard. So what is going to be the incentivization for me to want to spend my money to go to a sporting event if I know that everybody on the field is just mechanically
Oh,
enhanced?
they won't be people. They will be robotics. Full-fledged mechanical operations of robotics being.
Even that makes it worse, yeah, right? Because we know that the robots, they're they're maxed out. They have all of the capabilities. It's not really exciting to see a robot jump. I mean, in the beginning, it will be exciting for sure, but after a time, it'll plateau. We know that
How long is
robots
that?
can
How
jump
long is that time? Do you think, Devon? See, the interesting thing is I
a
think
decade or two.
And listen, a decade or two might be more than enough before it's back to being synthetic biological people playing in the sports, right? I mean, there's no really way to know that exact way that it would be articulated. But just like you had stated, right, it's very hard, in my opinion, to not be somewhat excited about something that could be looked at as like a revelation of this of a sorts. Being able to see the same sports you've always loved and played, but be played at a much higher intensity of a level where the risk factors are also possibly much greater. I mean, you talk about tackle football, right? Hundreds of pounds of machinery bashing against another hundreds of pounds of machinery could cause devastation on pretty significant levels on the field. I think these are the types of things that our species loves to watch personally. And so, yeah, like I mean, not only do I see it taking foot, but it's hard for me to see it actually really going away a decade, 2 decades from now, right? Where I think the potency of the abilities of our mechanical operations, particularly, this is why I actually brought up actuators up there, because today it's one of the reasons why robotics, in my opinion, is not able to perform to the manners and the maneuvering that we would really like to see to be in every single household and every single place in our society. Actuators, these means of creating robotic mechanical operations, like I said beforehand, either through the form of electromagnetics or hydraulics, um, are what gives robotics the ability to do these mechanical movements. And today, we are still kind of at this low end ability where we're putting hundreds, thousands almost of actuators inside of robots. But if you think about the human body, I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day who was a biologist. He was like, if you really want to think about it, I mean, if you start looking about the cellular phenomenons and the mechanics inside of cells, we could have tens, hundreds of trillions of actuators actually inside of our body. But significant ones, when we talk about joints and ligaments, maybe you get by with like 100,000, 120,000 or so like that of actuators, and you're able to interpret or you're able to produce the same movements on more phenomenal levels, much more intensity, much more pressure, if you will, and speed behind that. Than we would be able to do, at least biologically today. And so I think the robotics and sports, of course, it wasn't the direction I was going to go, but nonetheless, Devon, I think it was like a great example. Um, I think it's kind of like a match made in heaven almost.
Yeah, I don't have enough information to agree or disagree, but it is a very exciting, I guess, thought to see if that materializes in the future. When it materializes, I do believe we are headed in that direction.
Yeah, and I think it'll also be sold a little bit like this because I mean this is a very unfortunate truth about sports and or any intensities on the physical bodies in general. Our bodies run out of the ability to use these actuators, right? The mechanical tissue, or, sorry, the biological tissues that exist between our joints and our bones, all of these things wear down from the movements that we're producing through these sports, and of course the damage that gets done to people from head traumas, etc. I think it definitely will be promoted in that kind of format and way at first, for sure too, because it's going to be sold as something that would be much more safe for the people participating in it, aka robots, right, rather than homo sapiens at the time. But yeah, nonetheless, I do think that from even a sports perspective, Olympics, esports, majority of this will probably be done by large language models paired with robotics that are filled with actuators inside of them. And the large language models will play that interpretation ability to essentially be the mind of what would be that robot. And so, I think of course there's a lot that goes into that, but nonetheless, the large language model being able to produce results in the robot that we would think of as very similar to you and I being able to produce today, of course, like I said, just with a lot more impact force, a lot more speed, a lot more pressures that are able to be produced because mechanical operations are usually typically much heavier mechanical metal versus of our biological systems. Um, and from that, I think people will just love the results. I already love the results. I don't know if you ever watched the bot battles that already occurred today, Devon. Um,
Yes, where they have the robots crash into each other and things like that, fight each other.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yep.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's been
Yeah, I
around
was
for
just
like
thinking
20
about that
years
when you said
already.
it.
Yeah. And that started off. I mean, if you would have started talking about that like 20 so years ago, people would have thought you were mad that that would have been popular. Who would like to watch these little drones flying at each other in this little arena or whatever? But it's a very popular sport today. And
You said you like the results, or you like the direction that you like the direction that we would be going in and the results that come from it. What are the results that you like from having robotics replace, I guess, the current biological, excitement that we get from watching sports and things of that nature? Because as you're saying it, I'm looking at some of the negative things, and I guess I'll tell you some of the negative things beforehand, right? If we look at athletes, they kind of inspire us to want to reach our peak performance as human beings, right? LeBron James, often people always talk about how he spends $2 million a year just on his body to maintain himself to last 20 years. Muhammad Ali was an inspiration for many different people. Brock Lesnar, everybody acquires to have these, you know, um, top 1% physical goals. And then, even if you don't attain it, right, you still have a peak of what you perceive to be a peak, essentially, right? And if you remove that from society, right, and you tell us that everything is basically unorganic, motivate us to try to reach our highest potential, or what areas will we be able to see examples of people reaching their highest potential? Where can I see a LeBron James at if everything is dominated by robotics?
This is an interesting thought. You're talking about like the inspiration people garner from sports.
Correct.
I don't think that actually changes in the thoughts of people being idolized by other people. And so why they get idolized, maybe those reasons change. And so the celebrities of the world today change somewhat. And I actually do have said it twice there. I have a personal thought on that as well. And I do believe that actually will be partially of the case. And I think that's plays a mimetics plays a huge role in that, and the way that we look at like who is personified as a celebrity that you want to look up to. Um but I see what you're saying, and it's an interesting interpretation. I don't think the factor of people watching sports and garnering that same reaction is going to change. I think actually that's going to increase in potency. Like watching the sport and being able to root for your robotics team, and then that other robotics team not only loses, but robotics on the other opposing team are mutilated, destroyed, exploding. I mean, the amount of things that you'll be able to do with kind of like the robotics and the operations behind a robot gets hit and there's a piece of there's like a piece of some sort of explosion device underneath it, and so if it gets hit in the right way it explodes or something. There's so many different things that you'd be able to do.
Quick interjection though. When
Yeah.
you were talking about the robotic competitions that happen right now, did that inspire you to want to exercise, or did it inspire you to want to create? Because I feel like there's more of a mental thing.
I maybe I'm a little bit different than other people, and so I don't know if I want to like state what other people would think, but my own personal thing is it's educational. It gives me, I look at it and I say, what are the possibilities, right? And so I see possibilities are occurring, and then 20 years of increased potential possibilities, which only gives me more of like a, okay, how can we even just increase this more, right? Like this is only going to get better.
So, so it sounds like you're saying that it made you want to create versus when you watch a basketball game and you see Michael Jordan jumping and dunking on Patrick Ewing,
Yeah.
actually wanting to get in the gym.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
the actual physical component is removed if we are constantly implementing robotics in certain areas.
Yeah, and like how many people today use like sports athletes as their inspiration for working out? I'm really not sure. Will that number change because of that? Maybe. I probably see that as like just part of like the change of human society in general, right? I don't necessarily look at that as like a downside, right? If you need inspiration and that was the way you were garnering it, like maybe that's a you issue and not necessarily like the sports. That's the issue there itself. Like it's just your ability to interpret perception and awareness behind why you're doing what you're going to do. But there was one. Um, interesting thing I thought there too, which of course I just lost my train of thought on. But if you have another question or a statement, please.
No, I was just gonna say we saw that as I think it was through the '70s as basketball with Dr. J as basketball popularity started to increase. You started to see more high school and grade school, elementary school basketball teams, right? So we know that every basketball team needs at least 12 players, right? And you have at least 20 kids that are going to try out to make a public school basketball team, right? And as we saw the increase of the NBA success with Michael Jordan, you started to see nationwide an increase of younger people using Michael Jordan and all of the other celebrities that were there, Charles Barkley, as inspiration to want to go to the NBA. And if you want to go to the NBA, you have to condition your body and train your body for certain, extraordinary feats. So if you're telling me that we're removing that inspiration, what is going to inspire people to want to go to said NBA and push their body beyond certain limits? You might want to exercise for sure. I mean, when we're children, we ride our bikes all day and we're outside. But what's going to push you to want to do it in college, push you to want to do it to make it to a professional level? I don't really see that. I do believe that there are benefits to having robotics as well, right? Like I said, when I watched the show when I was a child where they were smashing the robots into each other, that did actually make me want to consider becoming an engineer. But as far as my physical gifts, watching an NBA game is what made me want to go to perform at a collegiate level. So
I
I see the cons of that as being
Yeah,
real.
and I do appreciate you brought my idea back into full view at least there, with what you said. So, because I listen, there's definitely a strong possibility behind if a large amount of people, and maybe this is more of a Western thing also. But if a large amount of people are using their inspiration of why they do sports or stay physically healthy, is the sport, the teams themselves and the professional leagues and the players themselves, if they idolize those specific players. I do agree with you. Like that could be looked at as like a downside for some people individually. Maybe I'm a little bit rougher on it, where I say, listen, that's a personal thing, and like if you need inspiration and you think because something in society changes, you've lost your inspiration to be healthy, to work out. Like I personally don't think that was a great inspiration for you to be attached to in the first place anyway, because it was somewhat deceitful, as obviously it's not around anymore and now your inspiration is gone, so it's led you astray. Um, but oh,
But
sorry.
to that point, oh,
No, no,
go
no,
ahead.
no. You have a
I didn't
thought.
want
You
you
have
to
a
lose it
thought.
though. Okay. So to that point, while that might be true, the inspiration can be looked at as just a fad, right? As soon as the inspiration is removed, then you no longer want to do said thing. We also have to acknowledge, just strictly in the West, I don't know much about the Eastern Hemisphere and their dynamic, but we do know that in the West, we are constantly counteracting the efforts to keep us unhealthy here in the United States, right? You're constantly on every corner. There's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King, there's always things to kind of take away the health benefits that we used to have just 40, 50 years ago, right? We removed certain criteria for gym, PE programs within elementary and high school, right? So we have a lot of efforts that are kind of keeping us obese here in the United States. So I think that everything that is counterproductive should have something that is productive to us. And I do see that sports, there are a lot of things that I don't like about, professional sports, but I do think that the inspiration that they acquire when you see somebody like, LeBron doing the things that he does, it does inspire you to want to take your physical gifts to the next level.
I, I gotta tell you, Devon, I don't know if it's something you would want to do, but like, this is okay. So this is the future we're going towards, and I think what you're saying to me is you're putting yourself in a position where I feel like you would be willing to help others see these abilities past these interpretations of just the inspiration behind why you did what you did was because of sports or these teams. um and it actually goes aligned it's aligned with my thought of what I was thinking beforehand. How you asked me before about the physical nature versus the creative nature of it. I think that because, of course, we were speaking about sports, but robotics being involved in every part of our society, every industry, every job, right? No stone unturned, right? Will also provide the time where people can then start questioning their actions. And then, back to like large language model a little bit, because I think they're going to play a huge role in the ability for people to have those understandings behind those determinations, the food that they're eating, the choices that they're making. Of course, this is more AI related than it is actually like all the actuators and the robotics and the physical mechanical operations that may be occurring. But I do definitely think that from an emotional side, capacity side, large language models will be there to play that role, and they will have to be there to play that role because of exactly what you had just mentioned. It's not going to be just sports, right, that are being essentially changed in a societal way. It's going to be every fashion of life. Every make and model of every industry is going to essentially be formatted in a different way so that these articulations by large language models and robotics can be had. And so there's that side to it where I think there will be a lot of time that will be opened up for those individuals, and what they choose to do with that may lead them down not only the healthy pathway, but the pathway to Devon, where Devon could have all of these things set up from an inspirational side of it to show these determinations that were made when you were watching the sports, why you did what you did, and that how you don't need the sports to be the reason that it's your inspiration. You're your inspiration. The world's your inspiration. Um, I don't know if you would want to do it, Devon, but like, man, just listening to you hear about it, I could totally see that as a business model for yourself. It also plays a role in back to where I think, people who will be personified in the future, be the celebrities of the world, how we think of the LeBron James today. The formation of the memetics behind that will be, I think, much more social media like, and how you represent yourself and go about those actions, I think, will be what brings your following. And so I don't know. I think that's perfect for you personally, Devon.
Self actualization.
There you go. And not only that, but
Yes.
you bringing it to other people through these technologies, these tools, large language models, the information that you'll be able to produce and then have that data aggregation for all of the other people who may seek that information to inspire them. Yeah, I think that's like you're great at it.
I have a question. He just inspired another question because I know that I actually just had this conversation with him about a week ago, so it's something that's really been on my head a lot. I'm assuming that you're very pro. I don't want to say. I don't know how else to say it, but the direction that we're going in with robotics, you're pro that, correct?
Yes, yes. I am a enthusiast and a, if you will, constructor of the sorts.
Mm, I actually just forgot what I was about to say. Sorry. I need a second.
No, that's my fault. I spoke too many words. I do this. You were asking me if I was pro the robotics future, the replacement of, you will, the majority of jobs today, how
Yeah,
they're
as I was saying it to you, I had something that I wanted to say because we were just talking about it, but I cannot. Oh, I remember now. So we have seen from studies that when men have more free time, because that's one of the major benefits or one of the major talking points that I'm seeing around um, robotics and the direction that we're moving into, right? We're going to have an abundant amount of time. We're going to have universal basic income. We're no longer going to have to, slave away for menial jobs. I get that. But we've seen from studies that when men have too much free time, they actually go into self destructive habits. Whereas when men have um, an overabundance of tasks to do, that's when we rise to the challenge. We become more uh, involved in the community aspects. We become more involved in family aspects. We become more involved in intellectual conversation, intellectual stimulation. Emotional capacity increases. When we have less, we start to see people start to go towards drugs, alcohol, and things that are destructive to our nature as humans. So women are the opposite, though, right? When women have more free time, that's when they're more socially engaged. That's when they're more involved, and when they have too much pressure, that's when they see the opposite. So I'm asking you, as a person who is very pro freeing up our time into this shift, do you feel like we are not at the point organically where we can handle that overabundance of time? Because we've also seen when you push humans too fast to adopt to something that we organically would not have adopted to, that's when we start to have societal conditions such as an increase of suicide, an increase of dependency on stimulants. How do you feel about the risk that can come from the advancement in the direction of robotics?
It's a great question, and so I actually think that we're in it. This is the risky time right now. The When robotics are in every single household and they replace the jobs, and we're there where the large language models are that are able to data aggregate for us, where we're able to essentially get any sort of information we need to in nominal amounts of time for nominal values. When we're at that point, I think we're past this issue of this threshold of people like looking for what they're going to do with their lives and what what's important to them. But nonetheless, I think we're actually going through what you just spoke about right this moment. People are losing their jobs left and right. Right, things are becoming much tighter. They're becoming much more difficult. Right, the U.S. dollar reserve currency is having difficulties around the world because of all the different types of geopolitical indifferences, if you will. And it is a dangerous time. It's not an easy time. It's maybe one of the roughest times that our species goes through for the next 1,000 years of recorded history. But nonetheless, I mean, we're here. And this is also why I brought up, what you were just speaking about beforehand being so powerful, because in those moments, the people who can articulate a future of optimism and of greatness are going to be idolized as we run into the future of that optimistic interpretation. My own opinion, of course, one man's utopia is another man's dystopia, right? um, but look back at the history. If in the 1600s, if you told all the candle makers, which is about 80% of the jobs worldwide, that they were all going to be replaced by light bulbs and electricity, they would have killed you on the spot in the means of the threat to their future. Right, in most cases, most likely. Uh,
But they died in other ways, right? Because during the industrial complex, a lot of people who could not adapt, the herd got thin.
That's right. But
So
look at our species population today in comparison to then. We kept moving, and so listen. I'm a big picture.
oh, now I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because I actually, this was the conversation because my brother is very, very pro innovation, and I'm not anti innovation. I never will be, but I do think that since we've become more connected through, let's just say something like social media and things of that nature, internet, right? I would say the increase in mental diagnosis has increased drastically, and I think it's directly correlated to the connectedness that we have via the internet. Humans are not meant to be as connected as we are to this current degree, right? And we adapted to this point so fast that it has made us become super depressed, super anxious, and a host of other mental problems that we have had as a collective. And I think that if we continue down this trajectory without taking a break to try to figure out, because I don't think that we fully figured out the effects of what the internet has done to us on a massive scale, and we're going to introduce another layer of things. I don't think so.
You know, I'm not one to say it was this fault or that fault. However, I would ask this one question to you and say, was it the tool's fault? Or was it the people who produce tools in a specific manner that may have led an incentivization of the direction of what you were kind of speaking about in this unfortunate circumstances for certain individuals? Yeah, the candle makers definitely died different ways unless one of them are still alive today. I mean, probably not, but who knows? Um, but this like this nonetheless of this change. Of course, the only constant in our reality, at least as far as I can tell, is change. Is going to occur whether we like it to or not. And so we can try our best to like hold position and essentially hold breath and stay where we are, which is just not the way that the world seems to work around us. And I think for our own benefit, ooh, Sasha's coming up, and he definitely has thoughts and opinions on this discussion too. Um, I think for our benefit, uh, looking at it from the macro perspective, the furthering of our ability to use these tool sets and understand them is extremely important. And the people who are behind the production of those tool sets will also only increase in importance. And so I think that's kind of actually what you were mentioning a little bit, my own thoughts beforehand, is it's not necessarily the tools, because a hammer can build a house and it can kill a person. It's the belief behind those tools, and then how the people who are using those tools create the articulations of all of these different dynamics we see in society. You can build a building, you can also build a very weird statue. So both exist. But Sasha, welcome up, man. I was actually going to close the space in the next like 20 minutes or so, but you're here, so let's keep it going for a little.
I'm enjoying the conversation very much, and I'll keep it short because I like what you mentioned about the macro level of adoption that is necessary for this sort of thing. And to complement Devon's argument about why the next layer of tech beyond the internet would almost be like too much, there's a reason why that feels that way, why the pressure it feels that heavy, because the on ramping to the technology prior to this was so slow, and it created this weird bystander effect on a macro level where the majority of people who engage with the internet today are on an introductory consumer point click subscription model level. So you have that history now of seeing the adoption of what the majority of human beings are interested in doing on the internet, and it turns out without the proper guidance into like all these different fields where they can really um, get more value out of the exchange and out of the information that's out there, it it just defaults to consumerism, and it defaults to convenience. That's going to continue. So AI doesn't like make things less convenient or uh, less efficient when it comes to consumerism, but the opportunity to embolden people into a new tier of like not being so passive with the technology is there. And the people who have experience with that have been onboarded, so to speak, from from the get go via creating projects for themselves or interacting with the level of technology that is on par with where we're at in 2026. It creates this very this bifurcated effect of moving around in a world that seems like it's stuck in the past, and not for healthy reasons either, for reasons unbeknownst to it, because it's adopted this bystander mantra of, well, these problems will take care of themselves, and I'll handle this when I have to. We may not be dealing with a technology that responds to that, and it might it might just it might not be interested in the delay proposition that so many people have built lifestyles around.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you're saying we are, as a species, at an adapt or die moment. Not the first, but just right now we're at the precipice of an adapt or die moment. If you do not adapt to the current standard, you'll just be pushed to the wayside because we're moving this direction regardless.
Yeah, I mean, even if that's constricted to a metaphorical, like psychological level, that's true. But that's always the case in in the micro and the macro elements. It's just I feel like people have, for the most part, by and large, they have found a nesting of comfort that they are unaware is still fragile, and we're seeing that with like the layoffs of people. It's like the people that are going to get laid off in a month are sitting around right now saying, "Well, thank goodness I'm not part of these hundreds of thousands of people that are that are being let go by these companies," and that lack of like intuitiveness to think that it could happen to them is what ultimately leads to their inability to be resourceful when the crisis hits home, and that's psychological. It's not necessarily like we're dealing with Skynet. It's just we're dealing with a very um, delayed reactive process as a society, and it's relied on the individuals carrying the bulk of the weight for moving things forward for far too long. And it might be that the next big like threshold requires more participation from the whole versus the individuals. I feel indifferent about this, given the day of the week. Sometimes I'm on the side of like we need more. more people involved, and sometimes I'm like, it doesn't really matter. So it it's different depending on the situation. But I think overall, for avoiding that adapter die like crisis point that transcends the metaphorical and actually impacts people on a physical level, some acknowledgement of the adaptive process beyond the delayed aspects that have been incurred would need to happen, or yeah, you might be dealing with a large bulk of people who simply can't operate on a mechanical level, on a physical level in the future.
I do agree that we've always had adaptive moments in our civilization, but I mean in our daily lives, right? Because I know you said that happens every single day, but not to the magnitude of what is at this moment. At this moment, if we do not execute this properly, there could be large effects that could hinder us in our growth process as a species for the next 100, 200 years. And I think that that's something that should definitely be taken into consideration when we're trying to go into another layer of which none of us really know what the results of this could be. And I think that we're seeing the effects of it greatly, and nobody's really, I guess, sounding the bell for how bad this actually could be to our society. I mean, like I said, the internet is just a small sample size of what could happen. We really don't know in our daily lives how much the internet has affected us into the magnitude that it has.
Well, I could tell you the end game, Devon, but you probably wouldn't believe me. I think
I'm
this
listening.
conversation though has been incredible. Sasha, did not think that you were going to articulate such incredible points right there, and I agreed with all of them. And I think they really, I think you
Well, yeah,
explained everything I've said in like 45 minutes in like 20 words. So I love you always,
well,
man.
yeah, for like 10 seconds, I want to highlight that point, and it's not that like I had the intention of doing that, but that is a micro example of what I'm suggesting. The technology, and I'm not using technology to articulate this. I'm driving to my destination, and I'm just having a conversation with people who I respect highly. That is the byproduct of engaging with the technology on a level to where you can discuss these sorts of topics and the minutia of it with a sense of preparedness and with a sense of like foresight and insight. And this is what I'm suggesting to Devon is if more people can't do this sort of very basic thing, of course we're in trouble.
We define basic.
Exploring potential and curiosity as an individual, and then relaying what your experience entailed to other human beings.
Well, and this is why I say I don't think it's necessarily basic, because you're asking humans to override hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of years of hardwiring that made us human, right? When we look at the internet, for example, we have millions and millions of people that we can talk to on a daily basis. They have proven that it literally puts so much stress on our mental capacity that people literally fall down due to anxiety, having increased anxiety attacks. You've seen increased depression that happens within the community. You see all type of negative effects that have come simply just from having so many multitudes of options of people to talk to, discussions to have. Humans were not meant to have as much variety as we have today. We are very tribalistic in our nature for hundreds of thousands of years. And in a small window of time, we've seen the entire world open up. So while it might seem basic for certain people to adapt, I think it's very, very hard to override brain composition. I think it's really hard to override our nature.
So I feel like you're making an argument for Darwin a little bit, Devon, and I actually disagree with Darwin in this, where I do believe that every person, everything that exists is able to represent some sort of articulation and sort of some sort of perception behind that articulation. Now, what you're saying to me is that I think is that you believe that a lot of other people won't be able to produce these reasonable articulations in a manner that maybe you and I would be able to say, like we were calling it basic, right? For us, and I think that Devon, that positions you, me individually as well, right? This is why I'm actually doing this, is because I agree with you. I think that changes occur in very small formations of these units that we call our species. And I and partially to what Sasha had said, right? Technology evolves in these very small pockets and bubbles, and then it's like it blows up, right, when some magnificent change occurs in those pockets and bubbles. And the ability for other people to interpret that and adopt that is kind of part of this like adopt or die decision. And it is very much so, in my own opinion, a decision that gets made, right, by one of us as an individual behind how we want to go about this, if we want to learn about this, if we want to delve into the creativity and to find this future pathways for ourselves or not. um and but nonetheless, I think you and I, at least I look at it this way, have a responsibility. We understand these articulations, we can converse about them, we can idolize and speak about the concepts and the underlying philosophies emotionally, physically, and allow for mental interpretations to be represented by these other units of our species. And so maybe we have a responsibility to educate as many people as we can in this kind of way. And you can't educate somebody who chooses to not want to be educated. And so that's definitely a decision and a choice. And it's partially why I love X so much, because all of the people here, all the people in this space have made the choice to be here. Unless you're forced to being here and you're listening to my space right now, I am so sorry. But, still love you guys nonetheless, regardless.
I don't think that people are not making a choice to want to be educated. I think that sometimes we, as people who are already over the edge, over the curve, we think that everybody has the same mental capabilities as us, and that's just not necessarily the case, right? And that's why I keep going back to the internet. You really cannot override um, nature, right? What was the biggest thing that pushed the internet to expand? Was pornography, right? You can't override human composition. They needed something that, even though porn it has very negative aspects to it, right? It's still biology at the end of the day. When you see it, you scroll past it, it has a way of attracting you towards it, right? So they needed to use our biology to get us to buy in to actually spreading out the internet. And I think the same thing will happen with robotics. One of the major things that people are talking about right now, right? Because people are super scared when you just talk about how jobs are going to be replaced. But if you tell them, hey, you can have this sex robot. A lot of people are already on board with it, and I've seen it. I've seen it in discussions. I've seen people try to go towards it, right? And that's going to be one of the major drivers to get people to want to buy into it, because at the end of the day, it's really, really difficult for us as humans to buy into change and buy into things that could negatively impact us, even though there are a lot of positive things that it is. Change is scary because it's the unknown. So while I do believe that there are benefits to having um, the things that you guys are talking about, I just think that the negatives sometimes need to be addressed so that we are not doing something that we can't reverse.
Well, I don't know about reversing, because of course, unless you know how to go back in time, there's no really ever doing that one. But I do think that I agree with you, and that's why education is so important. But listen, it's a decision in the end of the day. And to your point, you can't force people to do things that they don't want to do, to be educated upon, to learn this particular thing, to look at something in a different manner than the way that they were looking at it. And so,
Differentiate from your opinion, right? From the late '90s to now, has life become more organic or less organic?
organic. Um,
Yes.
yeah, well, I would probably say more synthetic, maybe, or more material based. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. But that also might be my philosophy of looking at Western civilization and society. Not that the East is completely different. Of course, they have much different philosophies that echo different kind of representations of the way that society should operate, and we are as a people. But nonetheless, technology is evolving over in the East way faster than it is over here in the West. So
So
it's hard to.
if you're saying that it has become more synthetic, do you feel like the average person's life has become better
Well, better
in
is.
that same time period?
I mean, better would
Better
be.
is subjective. I know you're
Yes,
going to
it's
go there.
exactly. It's
But
more
from
of an
your
opinion.
subjective view, do you think life has become better?
Oh yeah, 100%. Not even a question. people are connected all over the world. Like I can have a conversation with somebody who is in a far part of India who would have had no idea about technology, and they're able to articulate reasoning and these conceptions that they can then bring back to their village. And so you could go from one person not knowing anything to an entire village knowing people just because they had a conversation with somebody that existed on the other side of the world, which they would have not been able to have without the technological tools. So yeah, no question in my mind, the betterment of our
Okay.
of survival really
Okay.
means
So
of
I'm
survival.
glad you
Yeah.
said that. What metrics are we going to use to say that a person's individual life has gotten better? Could we not say education, emotional factors, finance, of course, health?
I would say ease. I like to wrap everything up into the bundle of ease of survival, and then how we have the ease of survival is then able to be articulated by each individual. But you can usually have some foundational pillars that most of us will agree on: food, shelter, water, right, air, oxygen, etc. These like means of the things that we seem to need to survive, and how abundant those are. And then I would go to things like electricity and the technologies and safe homes and neighborhoods and et cetera. You could build from there.
I think that's too generic because we're talking about survival, which is instinctual. When I'm talking about quality of life, I think I'm talking about the things that are beyond our animalistic mindset, right? When I'm talking about things
Yeah,
like
quality of life would be a different interpretation, correct? And I think that's also, it's like another one of these kind of
so I guess I
opinions,
should
right?
ask you, I guess then, has the quality of our life in the time that life has become more synthetic gone up or down?
I guess it depends on the individual. Overall, though, I would say up, but
Oh wow,
I'm
that's very interesting because I would say down. If you look at the amount of adults that are literate, it has gone down. The cost to raise a family has gone up. Health has severely gone down. Um, Emotional stability has gone down in the same time period. So, what factors would you say has made the quality of life better? Even the air, the air quality has gone down, and so has the water quality. So,
yeah,
what factors are we using?
Yeah, I wonder if that's more of like a Western interpretation of it though, or of like a macro perspective interpretation of it. Because like if you look at it from like clean water, right? I mean, India is a great reference. The majority of the country didn't even have electricity until I know the last decade. They have water systems that are being built there. Because of technology advancing, they've taken like plastics from like China, and they've been able to essentially make roads out of that in India. And so like that was a technological advancement that essentially took
I
materials
see
that
what
were.
you're doing. I get it now.
Yeah,
So,
it's like it's
so
hard because it's an opinion, right? And so
I
it's
would
like
say this.
it depends on who it benefits.
I would say this to your point. That has to happen, right? We can point to the Eastern Hemisphere because certain countries did not have the technological advancement that we had here in the West, right? So at a certain point, when you are advancing technologically, you're going to have an increase in quality. I get that, but when you focus too much on the technological rise, you start to notice that you will have a decrease if it's not equalized. This is what the point that I'm making, right? And we have gotten to the point in the West where we're so hyper focused on the technological aspect that we have removed the feeling of what life has to offer us, and that's why you're starting to see the imbalance. You're starting to see corporate greed over, what is it? Greed over profit over humanity, right? And we're starting to see that affect all of us. The greed sickness start to affect not all of us here. I'm saying, but we're starting to see it affect the West. And
Devon, can I ask you a question? Because I really like this train of thought here.
down
Do
to the
you
numbers, I don't think that that's the proper way of going.
do you feel as if the part of the world were to eclipse, let's say, the suggestion that the West experiences a higher quality of life, which is a complete fabrication that the West tends to manipulate so that they can maintain control of like the economic factors and the display of power and strength. But over the next 100 years, if more people from this part of the world are interested in experiencing a higher quality of life with all of the let's just say, technological advancements that have been provided to them from this part of the world and all of the connectivity that's been provided to this part of the world, do you think that they will rush to that opportunity, or will the continuation of the more docile and sort of bystander society that I suggest exists here, the point and click society, make $100,000 a year minimum, and you could just coast if you're single, 200 plus, and you're fine as a family. You don't need to go explore the world. You don't need to uh, learn about new cultures. You don't need to learn about the tech. Life is just about hitting this threshold of financial security and then lounging. Do you feel like people in the West would take the opportunity to experience a higher degree of potential?
So I'm not trying to make this political at all when I make this statement. But Sasha, are you in the United States? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm in the U.S., but
Okay.
I'm not a naturally born citizen
Oh no, no.
of
As
the
long as you're
United
in the
States.
U.S., have you been here for the last couple of years? Before I ask you this question. Okay, fine. So over the last couple of years, from my personal opinion, one of the things that I think made Trump so successful is that he pivoted towards the dire need for people to want to have that conservative, quote unquote, natural feeling, right? He was using a lot of rhetoric and using a lot of propaganda showing women churning butter on a farm, right? There is a serious push, and I'm seeing it from people on the left and on the right to want to get back to when things were simpler, right? That is by no means saying that I'm trying to endorse, the right, but I do see people often saying, "Hey, we are at a point where I think this is just too much." I'm seeing people actually start to buy flip phones because they only want to be able to make a phone call and text. They don't want to have to be on their phone all day going to the internet. We're seeing a lot of people say, "Hey, man, I miss when the 80s rock music was super good and we had bands and instruments. I don't want to just constantly hear the digitized version and all of the 808s and things like that." People are insisting and craving to have the old feeling back. And that was one of the things that he exploited and used to kind of pivot people towards a certain direction. So I would say yes. Not only do I think people would accept it, I would say people screamed it out from the rooftop saying, "Hey, we kind of want this lifestyle back." He was using a lot of imagery of people sitting on the ranch and herding cattle. You're hearing people say, "I want to grow my own fruits and vegetables. I no longer want to have over industrialization." I am hearing people from the rooftop say certain things, and he, kind of manipulated the rhetoric to make it seem like it was something. But I'm just using that as an example in real time that we actually saw people kind of say, "Hey, I want that slower pace."
Yeah, that's a good point. For me, it boils down to, and this is somewhat anecdotal because I'm going to base my argument on experience, but
Oh,
it comes down to
real quick, I did want
it.
to kind of
Oh
kind of
yeah,
add something. And not only that, the opposite. He kind of branded the opposite side as being the tech futuristic big corp guys, which is hilarious if you look at how it was in the 80s and 90s, who was actually big corporation. But he kind of branded them to look like they were the big corp tech guys, and big corp and tech was bad. And a lot of people went the opposite direction. But go ahead. Sorry, Better.
yeah. This is to Death's point, and just another perspective based on my experience. The the availability of mobility and the resourcefulness of being mobile seems to be the linchpin for making this work. You can't actually go and experience some of these other parts of the world without going, even though there's a heavy angle to trying to simulate it all through YouTube videos and creator accounts that get as close as you possibly can, 4K, 8K, to taking a hike at the Incan Trail and going up to Machu Picchu, or experiencing a downtown walk in a city that you'll never be able to visit. So what it boils down to me as is an attempt to simulate psychologically the experience of mobility while keeping the person docile and keeping them incubated in a very, like you said, conservative approach, a traditionalist approach to hunkering in and taking care of the family at home and exploiting that, which is, I mean, that's pretty important to do that. But once you get that handled and crossed off of your checklist, there is a bigger world out there to explore. And I think as we gain accessibility to that via real technology, there's going to be a constraint imposed on it to say, well, if these people start doing all of this, then we lose our stable default bread and butter human being that has been producing so much for the domestic GDP and domestic production. And ultimately, I think that is a good conflict of interest to have, because it asks us, how much do we really want uh, to to expand? How much do people really desire the uh, the interest in expanding and discovery, and puts that on the line.
I think I want to close it up right there. That was a great, like a great ending thought, because I think anybody should really think about this, Sasha. Right? Like it's our position in this big world, this society, and what role do we want to play in it? But I really appreciate both of you, Devon and Sasha, for coming up today, taking the time out of your day to come and speak on this topic. It's definitely something that's near and dear to me, and it's going to be near and dear to all of us as time progresses forward. But I love everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. See you guys.